All right. Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you, thought leaders, for joining us. Today is November 19th, almost Thanksgiving for us in the US. So I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone who has helped us to get the CRMCOE launched. And it's been going very well for the last 1 year. So the purpose of CRMCOE is to help the COE leaders to learn and share their knowledge with the fellow CRMCOE leaders. So today we are going to be talking about multi-org environments. So if we have more than one org, how are we going to manage the org? And then how do we prioritize it? So we have two great thought leaders. Andrew Davis from Capado, Mukesh is from HCSC. And I just wanted, Andrew, if you could introduce yourself, that'd be great. And
Sure, yeah. So I'm Andrew Davis from Copado, as Velu had said. I'm the Senior Director of Research and Innovation at Copado. And I've had a strong focus on the Salesforce development lifecycle for the last 6 or 7 years or so. I'm the author of the book Mastering Salesforce DevOps, and that's also the area that Copado focuses on.
Thank you, Andrew. Mukesh?
Hi, I'm Mukesh Prusty, and I'm a principal architect with HCSC. I have probably now it is the 13th year on my Salesforce ecosystem journey. I have been doing Salesforce since 2008 and been seeing the journey from those S-control time to now the industry solution. So I see how this product has evolved. So yeah, great speaking on this platform.
Thank you, Mukesh. So for fellow attendees, please make sure you put your mic on the mute. Make sure we are not hearing any background noise. So if you are using your mic, please stay on mute other than Andrew and Mukesh. And then, so my name is Velu Palani. I'm the moderator, and I'm the COE leader, CRMCOE leader. I work for HCSC. It's a healthcare services corporation based in Chicago, Illinois. So we provide health insurance to 5 states: Illinois, Montana, New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. So my role in this company, I'm the Salesforce platform leader. We are responsible for architecture, administration, governance, policies, and then strategy and innovation. So I've been in the ecosystem for about 21 years. So I started using Salesforce in 2000, and this is beyond comprehension for me. So when I started, I thought I knew Salesforce. Now I'm kind of lost. So I have to say, I'm reinventing myself pretty much every day. So I force myself to talk to people like Andrew and Mukesh on a regular basis, see what's going on outside of my daily work life. So it's an interesting platform. So I've been working with the platform for many years, but it doesn't mean that I know everything. And I don't think anybody would know everything here. So it's going to be a fun topic today. The topic that we are going to talk about is multi-org management. How do you manage the multiple orgs in an organization? At the same time, how do you prioritize? So the topic that we are going to talk today is, first thing is educating the leadership. How do you educate the leadership, and why and how, and strategy, standardization versus differentiation, project delivery and architecture, governance, risk and compliance, education, and talent development. So when we started brainstorming this session, Andrew said this is a 6-week course. Really, how do you do it in 1 hour? So we are going to make an attempt to share our experience and expertise with the fellow CRMCOE leaders and anybody who's going to be watching or listening to this event. So let's get started. So educating the leadership. So when when we were discussing, the first thing came up, Salesforce, CRM, is beyond sales, service, and marketing. This is your business platform. So when leaders look at Salesforce or any CRM, as a matter of fact, they look at its, what is it there? Just sales, service, or marketing. So I want to ask a question to Mukesh. Why do you think the educating the leadership is the first step when you bring in a CRM platform like Salesforce?
Sure, Raghu. This is again, living with Salesforce for so long, we are always the advocates of Salesforce. But when it comes to the leadership, for them, it's just a platform. And even many times I have seen this question that, Salesforce, oh, you can do opportunity management. Yeah, you can do case management. Okay, all right. But that's just the background that the leaders have. But we as the IT advocates or the platform advocates, we bring that depth of knowledge that Salesforce is not just an opportunity management or case management. Salesforce is now, as Velu said, it is an enterprise platform for managing your business. And they have come along with this industry solution now. We see that every kind of industry solution is there in the platform now. So that's kind of how I look at it. The second thing I have and this is real life, I can tell you with my experience that the leaders think you go ahead, swipe your credit card, buy 10 licenses, and give it to your business team, they will run this platform. So that is where it comes, why we need to educate the leaders, why this has to be a top-down from the leadership, from the business leadership, from the IT leadership, and why do we have to educate them about this platform? This is not just a platform you go buy 10 licenses and you can run your business.
I hear you, Mukesh. I've seen large companies doing that in my consulting experience for the last 15, 20 years. Andrew, if you say we have to educate the leadership, and I assume you agree with that, and if you agree with that, where do we start?
So just setting the stage that here we are with this group focused on the role of a COE, and especially on this topic of multi-org management. So when you're using Salesforce across multiple production orgs and you're focused on the role of a COE or whatever governing body you have, that is basically the highest leverage point that you can possibly get to in the Salesforce world, right? That is where the company has clearly decided to invest strategically in Salesforce on multiple fronts, multiple production orgs, but they're trying to create a coherence, some layer of coherence between what these different orgs are doing. And so the COE leader is in this position of trying to understand what are the various needs of these different orgs. So if, let's say we're coming from the technology point of view, like Velu and Mukesh and myself, for example, just for us to know all of Salesforce technology, it's too much to know, right? To know all of the different orgs and what are the use cases, it's too much to know. For business leaders, to know not only about their business strategy and the company revenue targets and employee concerns and so forth, but then to also know about the various subtleties of architecture, it's too much to know, right? So we're operating in an environment where there's far too much information for any one individual to credibly say, I know what's going on, which requires then some collaboration. So we say education. Every time we open our mouth and communicate to somebody else, it's education. They're getting educated on what do we think? And so then the question really is, about information flow. Do we have strong information flow from the top down about company strategy, from the bottom up about the architectural concerns? And the point is about balancing the variety of concerns. And so if we're technical specialists, we're sensitive to a different set of concerns than the business leadership is sensitive to. We're sensitive to things like technical debt, standardization, process adherence, adoption, those kinds of things. Those business leadership doesn't really care about that directly. They're sensitive to different concerns, but they can't fulfill their company-wide strategic goals without the assistance of the technical team. If you've invested so much in Salesforce, you've got multiple orgs, the success of that multi-org strategy will, to some substantial degree, determine the success of your company. So they have to rely to some degree on the technical specialists. There has to be mutual trust, mutual information flow. We have to respect those business concerns, cost reduction, increased profitability, whatever those concerns, but they need to respect the technical concerns. And then the how, I think, just making sure that there are those lines of communication, making sure that they're understanding that this is a strategic enabler for the company, but that it needs to be operated skillfully.
I agree with you on that, Andrew. What I have seen when I was, I consulted for many organizations, even in the COE space. So especially when you look at an organization which has got, let's say, more than 2 orgs. If it's 1 org, no problem. There is no issue. But anytime when you have more than 1 or 2, the biggest challenge is that whenever there is a new business initiative that the leadership want to bring in, they try to look at the path of least resistance. Why don't we spin an org? Let's start the program going. And then we worry about consolidation. I don't think, in my experience, the consolidation ever happened. It's always 13 orgs, 14 orgs, 15 orgs. So we try, that's where we get a lot of pressure, especially the COE leaders, we get a lot of pressure. That's something that I thought I would share with you. You start with 3 orgs, by the time 2-3 years, you will have 7-8 orgs. And especially if you have a global organization, you can even imagine the challenges that we face. So I have one last question for both of you before we go to the next topic. Is there any place where the leadership can start educating themselves, like Trailhead or Udemy or Khan Academy on Salesforce leadership, or the multi-org strategy? Anyone?
My initial thought is that you're talking about probably some of the busiest people in the company, right? So the level of time and patience they have to invest, it feels unlikely that they'll log into Khan Academy unless they're quite an exceptional or unusual person. I feel like the education needs to happen in conversations, and means you've only got a limited bandwidth. You might get like half an hour a month or something like that, but you may think about like guerrilla education, like just educating other executives and just gradually increasing company-wide awareness about how this stuff fits together from multiple angles. But it doesn't feel like it's a linear process where you can sit them down and force them to go through a course and then they get educated.
Yeah, just to add there, I can tell. Yeah, some of those that I have seen also working is like these executive council meetings, where you actually bring your leaders, tell them what you're really doing on this platform, and educate them that what this platform can even do more. That's kind of what I have seen in many places that works really well, not just for educating them, but also bringing up to speed what's really happening in their platform.
If I can add one brief point, education begins with respect. You will learn from the people that you respect. So who are the people that these leaders respect? They respect other C-level leaders, other exec leaders, whatever. So one thing you could be this extremely skillful. For example, if you go out, hunt around, find a company that has been very skillful in doing whatever it is that you think your company needs to do, and then set up a date, like get the executives to have a date, and then, oh, what did you do? Tell us about this. And if you can manage to do that, that's a bit of a coup.
Good education tip for me. I think I like this topic, and I will follow that suite, and I will let you know. I have an immediate idea that I want to follow with someone, especially in our organization. Okay, let's move to the next topic. As I said, it's a big topic, so we are going to go a little bit faster. So the next one, when we talk about strategy, right? So we understand everything starts with an education, especially when you have a multi-org environment. You have CRMCOE leaders to take a decision to help the organization to manage that multi-org and prioritize it. We understood education is the key. Then comes with the strategy. Oftentimes, when we look at strategy, it is made, decisions are made at the top level. But in the Salesforce environment, and we all know, a lot of people, including the developers, some senior developers, seasoned developers, architects, have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, expertise, competencies, understanding the platform. So how do we, when you look at this screen here, or the slide, there is a business integration process, business process integration, and business process standardization. So maybe, Andrew, you had helped me or helped us to put this slide together. Can you speak to it?
Sure. So strategy is a big term. Here we're speaking with this slide and this visualization, for the sake of time, we're talking about this one aspect, which is multi-org strategy. Should you have multiple orgs? Should you, we have a new project, let's spin up a new org. Is that a good idea or not? To really back to your original point about the multiplication of orgs versus their consolidation. This is a simplified version of a slide that's been floating around, the Salesforce world for a while. But basically, if the company is invested in Salesforce as a strategic platform, Salesforce is a business enabler. Therefore, your org strategy needs to reflect the business strategy. And these two axes indicate the two aspects of business strategy that you need to consider. On the vertical axis, how much integration does there need to be? In the sense that, like, if Mukesh is running one org, I'm running another org. Is there any need, Mukesh is running one business unit, I'm running another business unit. Do we have to coordinate at all? Can I operate completely independently of him? That's what we're talking about integration. If we can operate independently, then we can make different decisions. If we have to work very closely together, that's the integration aspect. Standardization. In Mukesh's business unit, do they follow, or could they follow, or does it make sense for them to follow the exact same process that I follow in my business unit for sales process, for the opportunity maturation, for the case creation and resolution process, for whatever? Are we going to standardize across the company? We as a company, we have decided we are going to standardize our case handling process, so there's one phone number to call no matter what division. That's what we're talking about with standardization. So these are business level decisions, which is why there has to be strong, high communication bandwidth, so to speak, between the executive leaders and the people with the technical knowledge to make advice about the Salesforce platform strategy, so that you can discuss and say, well, do we have integration? Can they be operating independently? One of the natural, so you get these four possibilities. If there's the simplest scenario, single org. You've got one team, they all will follow the same process. It's all going to be tightly integrated. Just have one org, right? And that is in fact why you have companies that migrate lots of legacy business apps onto the one Salesforce platform, because each org is naturally integrated. You get multiple orgs, they're naturally differentiated. And so I don't want to read through all of the variations on this, but that's what this is saying, is that the other three quadrants can speak to the possible need for multiple orgs. But then the question is, well, I guess I am speaking to, so in the upper left, the coordination aspect, if you have multiple orgs and they need to be highly integrated, what you need is strong communication. So Mukesh's department and my department have to have very strong coordination so we can integrate. If on the bottom right-hand side, replication, one scenario where that arises is data residency. We have a US org based in the US. We have a European org based in Europe. Data residency. We want them to function exactly the same. That's process standardization. They don't have to be integrated. The data doesn't have to be integrated, but the processes need to be the same. And that's where something like I mentioned standardizing metadata. So the idea would be creating packages, for example, unlocked packages, and using like standard process, and we distribute that to multiple orgs so that all the orgs follow the same process. And we at the COE level will update those packages and will update the consistent process across all the teams. And the bottom left-hand quadrant, if everybody's independent, nobody needs to work together, then knock yourself out, multiple orgs, no problem. But again, it's a business level decision.
I hear you loud and clear. I think it's if you look at this slide, it's so kind of self-explanatory. At the same time, Mukesh, what are the practical challenges that we face when we go to these strategy sessions? I'm sure you've gone through multiple strategy sessions from the leadership all the way to the developers side. For the COE leaders, when they go into the meetings, what do you think they should expect? And what challenges you think, the practical examples, if you can give us, that would be great.
Sure. So based on what Angie just mentioned about the way, this org decisions are determined based on the business process or business process standardization. If you look at this, right, coordination is key as one of those aspects that Andrew mentioned, right? I have seen challenges where, forget about two business units, within the same business unit, right? There is one business leader speaking one language and another business leader speaking another language, right? You will always see those kind of conflict, right? So how do they, how is that going to be coordinated? Now, from a platform perspective, we have Salesforce Marketing Cloud, we have Salesforce Sales Cloud, we have Salesforce Service Cloud. Now, how they can coordinate as well, right? I'm talking about a campaign management solution in a Salesforce Marketing Cloud that can be running silos, and then I am running a sales process without knowing what Marketing Cloud is doing or what my marketing team is doing, right? So that is kind of those challenges that we often see. I have, with my experience at many of the large enterprise life sciences client, one of the aspects that Andrew mentioned about replication, they do a lot because most of their sales process are the same, but they replicate because of the data residency. They have to be within, let's say, Japan has their own org, US has their own org, EMEA has their own org, right? But they replicate this. So by doing that, what happens is many times I have seen IT challenges there. It's not an easy thing to manage when you have grown so much where you are managing actually, let's say 15 production org because of the data residency regions, and you have to manage for one single component, you have to replicate that 15 times.
Yes.
So those are kind of practical challenges that I have seen in my life as well. And this is all, I would say that coming from our experience, it's not one-stop shop where it can solve our problem. We'll still deal with this problem as we, deal with the multi-org situation.
I hear
We did, while we're lingering on this topic, we did have one question from Matt come in about what if these multiple orgs have come as a result of acquisitions, which is, I think, maybe one of the most common common reasons where it's just multiple orgs because of historical reasons. And my brief comment on that is that it is this is part of your merger and acquisition strategy, right? There needs to be some process of integration, some timeline of integration. There's a lot of aspects to M&A. There's lots and lots of aspects, training, data standardization, integration. But basically, you just need to think holistically about where you want the business to be in a few years. How do you want these to be integrated? And then think what's the ideal and appropriate strategy for orgs, and then what's the pathway to get there, and is it, and in some cases, is it worth it? Is it worth all the lift for us to move everybody there? But I think that's just part of the pain of M&A. That's what you've bought. When you buy a company, you've bought a massive data headache, so you kind of committed yourself already.
I can tell you, Andrew, I have lived with that for 3 years, with a large acquisition for one of our clients when I was at my consulting side. And this was one of the, I think, may not be the largest, but maybe second or third largest in the life sciences industry. And it's been 3 years now, and we are still, what I'm hearing is they're still dealing with, the org merge and whatnot. So it's not easy for sure.
So it's basically a messy divorce and messy marriage. That's what I'm hearing. So, all right. No, I think the strategy when it comes to, in my understanding, strategy is not one time. It's an ongoing discussions, mini sessions and major sessions, bringing the right people and having a right system to track all the strategies. A lot of times we talk, and even the COE leaders, we just go listen to people. At the end of the meeting, how many action items came out? Who is following through? How are we going to do that? Because these are the discussion topics, brainstorming, but a lot of ideas came out of that, come out of this. So I've noticed that as well. So let's go to the next topic. In continuation of the strategy, right? Now, when we look at the standardization and differentiation, we talked about multi-org. We are talking about multi-orgs. We are talking about global versus local multi-orgs. Like some companies only stay in one country, but they will have multiple orgs. Some companies will have global. So when we look at balancing the standardization versus differentiation, what does this mean when you deal with a company which has got orgs across the globe? Maybe Andrew, can you help us to understand this differentiation versus standardization?
And here we're really just kind of double clicking into what is the same topic that we had before, but kind of looking at it in a little bit more granularity. And we had a comment from Saurabh saying that he's seeing typically the org strategy being more defined by local legal requirements rather than the ideal simple technical reasons. Technically, ideally, the company would have everything just in one org, but maybe you can't. So I think the point is there are a lot of competing forces that are all being applied at the same time: legal forces and business strategy and historical reasons and technical reasons. And the question is balancing all of those. Broadly, what this diagram is saying, because I'm kind of I made the diagram, so I need to explain it a little bit. The different colors. So there are, I see there's three main elements that you need to be considering as an organization. Innovation. How do you allow for innovation, growth, change, and that really is easiest sort of at the local level. If the people who have the problems are empowered to solve the problems themselves, that's really why people like Salesforce, is because you can have business specialists who can build apps that fit their needs. So there's the innovation aspect. Standardization. Standardization helps with cost savings, helps with consistency, helps with clarity. And then there's risk management. So I've got this red risk management column that are like hard restrictions that have to be applied at every level: compliance, legal reasons, security reasons, data, And so there's as one person I know spoke to it, this is not a democracy. That is where the authoritarian side of the company comes in, right?
Yes.
You will not do this. The democratic stuff is over on the left here. And then it's finding a balance where how much can be done in a standardized way and how much should be differentiated per country. So to Saurabh's point, if the only reason you've got multiple orgs is because of these legal data residency reasons, then you want to push most of the emphasis down onto the standardization process and use things like unlock packages. And you need a strong DevOps process, shout out to Copado and so forth, strong DevOps process that can help to make sure that if you have an update, you can syndicate that out to all of the orgs that need to get the update, right? So you need a good process for keeping them all standardized. But if you have a more legitimate need for differentiation, like, this process really should be different for a totally different kind of business, then you'd have more of the innovation pushed up on that green layer up there to the local control. And then I'm just kind of mentioning at the very bottom, there is a kind of standardization that we sometimes don't think of, which is the very fact that we bought Salesforce. You're standardizing on solutions that are industry-wide solutions, because you didn't, HCSE, you didn't need to build your own CRM tools. You use an industry standard, but then you have your company standards, and then you have local standards. And then even within that, there still can be chaos, as Mukesh was saying earlier, but you try.
I hear you, Andrew. So this is, Mukesh, when I look at the screen here, or the slide, one of the things comes to my mind is innovation. So innovation in my books, it is overused, sometimes misused. If you go to a company, any large enterprise, innovation there is a business side of innovation, there is a technology side of innovation, and then there is a local innovation, each product they innovate something. So specifically when it comes to multiple orgs, where do you think the innovation should fit in? I see here local has local teams, which are, let's say, COE is a centralized component, whereas there is a local teams that deliver whatever they need to deliver. Do you think it's better to have innovation in a COE level, or you agree with this slide that it can be better served if it is in local teams?
Yes. So there are many aspects to it, right? It's just not that it is one standard fits all. First thing is, when we say innovation in this platform, could be anything, right? It could be an enterprise as a company, what we are looking for as a new, right? That's innovation. So what the layer that you see, industry standardization, is what Salesforce serves as a platform. Now, part of what, to your question, I still think that there is a piece of innovation at the COE level, right? Which primarily thinks that is something that you can actually bubble it up to your local, whether it is local or even at what we call as product lines or product one. So yes, there is certain innovation that has to happen at the local, but if I have to run the COE, I would like to have some sort of control in running my innovation strategy within the COE and bubble it up so that it's actually reaching to the product as well. And the product has their own, innovation, because they are supporting the business line. So they would like to, innovate onto supporting their business line. But there has to be a company-wide, that's something that COE also needs to be propagating.
Good point you're bringing in, Mukesh. This is where I said overused when it comes to innovation. Sometimes the standardization is considered as an innovation. For example, DocuSign versus EcoSign. or whatever that we have two signs. I keep forgetting the two signs. One is DocuSign. I think it's an EcoSign. Um, so when so one if the innovation if the standardization should be kept within the COE, whereas within, let's say you implement DocuSign on both orgs, so the local teams should be able to help incrementally identify some of the innovative ideas and creative ideas that can be shared with the COE. So COE can go to the other orgs and say, okay, hey, this is what we are finding from these local orgs. Can we implement the same thing into your org? So I have seen that seems to be working well in certain organizations. I do know there are some questions. I think, Matt, you have a question, so we will be answering your question. We are not ignoring it. So we will take about 5 minutes or so at the end to answer the question. So please hold on. And if anybody else has questions, please go ahead and put your questions on the chat and we will do our best to answer. If not, you can reach out to us directly. We will be happy to answer. Okay, so let's move to the next topic. Project delivery and architecture. So at the end of the day, we can talk strategy, we can educate, we can talk about differentiation, standardization, but this is where the rubber meets the road. You better deliver something. You just can't keep talking about strategy and so on and so forth. So, you get paid for delivery, not for talking or not, what is the outcome that you're producing? And so this is something that project delivery and architecture. So when you talk about multi-org, delivering project, whether it's a single org, multiple orgs, delivering projects is the number one responsibility for the entire Salesforce ecosystem within a company. And architecture plays a major role. So Mukesh, I know you helped us to put this presentation, this slide together. So can you speak to it in a multi-org environment? What does this mean? Click versus code and all the things that you see here. What does this mean? What should COE leaders pay attention to project delivery and architecture?
Sure, Velu. So spending so much of time in this platform and as an architect, my advocate always on this platform, and when it is coming from COE, we always overlook this platform and keep building what we want to build. But there are a few things that we always keep in mind, that we are not building a ERP system here, or we are not building a open source system here. Salesforce has given so much of power in their platform itself, right? So that is when we always look at the out of box versus click versus code, and how do we establish that delivery methods so that every time we make anything into production, we have the right balance, check and balance, that we define, at what percentage we need to be aligned with the platform. I don't want to quote like, hey, let's be 100% out of box, or let's be 100% only configuration. No, that's not possible because there is business needs. But that said, as leaders, this is also our responsibility to go and we talked about that education, right? So as IT leaders and IT advisors on this platform, this is our responsibility to also educate our business partners. What does that means when we are actually coding and when we are customizing? Because then we are introducing tech debt. We don't see that today. We will see that 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line. And then
5 months down the road, not 5 years.
And then we'll be going to the same business leader and asking money that, hey, give me this money and I have to fix this. So that's what I meant about establishing the standard delivery methods in terms of out of box versus click versus code. So as much as we can use the power of Salesforce we better be utilizing the platform as well as we are scaling ourselves. We'll be able to scale. That's the whole point.
And one thing that I just wanted, this reminds me, I started when my career a while ago. If you all heard about mainframe, right after my college, I started working on the mainframe. And then I started with the client server. Mainframe, they retired. If you all remember, some of you might remember something called client server. Mainframe is antique that you should know. Client server you may have heard about. Every time when there is a problem, before it becomes a problem, it is a request and enhancements. So then once it goes into production, the same problem happens, it becomes a bug. In the Salesforce world, we don't call it as a bug. It's called tech debt. I am fascinated. I want somebody to, either you or whether you agree, tech debt is a kind of a bug. Only thing is it does not break the Salesforce, because Salesforce won't let you put a bug in the system because they fixed that. I consider every time when you call tech debt, it is not, many times tech debt is a bug because we did not do a good job of architecting, or we did not pay attention to this. If you think about Java or any other application, it fails. You get a hard bend. Salesforce won't let you do that. Instead of hard bend, you get a tech debt. You keep adding things that are not, you just put it in the basement, you never use it. And then that's what I think. Anybody disagree with that thought process? Yeah, bug versus tech debt.
I'll briefly respond on that, and then direct us to one of the other points on here. There's another quadrant, we don't have it here, about like, can users see it or not? And is it positive or negative value? So features and bugs. Features are seen by users and they bring positive value. Bugs are seen by users, they bring negative value. But the equivalent tech debt is kind of like not seen by users, but it can bring positive value to address that. And risk aversion, like addressing security issues and so forth, is not seen by users. Those things are all hidden behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And so there's kind of you need to divide your work, and you need to be doing some work to address tech debt. But I want to draw out the fourth bullet point on here, just because it's probably not well known to everybody, this project versus product mindset. Now, this is a big movement in the DevOps world. It's not necessarily everyday talk elsewhere, but if we think about the history of IT of IT has largely been creating projects like, okay, well, what's going to cost $2 million? We'll get these licenses, we'll get the people, built it. Okay, great. It's built. That's a project. Projects have a finite life. Start, end, project team comes on from Accenture, they roll off, it's done, right? Project. A product lives forever. Right. So product, you create a product, it may have an end of life, but basically you create a product, and you've got to have people there to support it, to maintain it, to educate people on the product and so forth. It is, in retrospect, utterly insane to have ever treated software as like projects, because if the thing is meant to run forever, if all the people who built that, who know how it was built, why it was built, what it's connected to, if they all roll off, you have no knowledge left over to maintain that tool, right? And so there's an enormous potential cost to outsourcing, right, that you really have to take into consideration. And you have to think, I mean, Brian made the point also, but we're very related. It's the total cost of ownership, the long-term cost, that it is, I think, perhaps the word is seductive. It is seductive to think I can just give $2 million to a consulting company, they'll come in, they'll make it work, and everything will be better. It is seductive to think I can custom code something that'll be exactly the way it always was, and we put that in there, and then we won't have to think about it again. It's seductive to say, oh, I come into Salesforce, I just drag and drop, and I can change these things and so forth. All of those things seem like easy because we don't see the full long-term cost of them. We're not thinking about the long-term cost of outsourcing. We're not thinking about the long-term cost of the technical debt of maintaining code customizations and even config customizations. So we think back to that, like local company standard, industry standard. If you just go with the industry standards, that minimizes the total cost of ownership. Like Salesforce works this way, we're just going to work this way. It's not the way we want to work exactly, but it's like, okay, we can make it work, and it reduces your total cost. If the company has a standard that's a little bit different, but you build it centrally and you go with that standard, that's a lot less expensive than everybody having their own independent things. You really only want to customize when you really have to, because it's shockingly expensive. It's way more expensive than you think it is. And then, this gets down to keeping people in the company long-term is also part of your architecture.
Oh, it's an excellent point. So I've seen organizations, many organizations, I think they're learning. When I say they're learning, bringing architects as an internal asset, not hiring a project-based contractors. I see there is a shift happening. If you, there is a website called 10K Advisors. I don't know whether any of you noticed 10K Advisors. They produce an yearly report on the demand of the resources. So the architects are very critical for any companies because they now there is a great resignation is happening, so people move around a lot, but generally the architects tend to stay longer, right? So they have a good knowledge, they have a good expertise that they hold on to, especially in the Salesforce world, it's more important. So the last, before we go to the next topic, Mukesh, how do you measure a success of an implementation? You come from an implementation for many years from Accenture, and now you are working with HCSC. First year, second year, 5 years, like as Andrew said, you don't do this project, it is a product. So when you look at that, I would consider the first year is always a honeymoon. Once the product is launched, the honeymoon period, everything looks really good. It's like a new car. You still smell it. But when the average call handle time, your number of calls coming in, the time in which it takes to close it, all these nice things you produce in the first month, second month, 6 months, 1 year, then the actual reality kicks in. How do you, and I've seen organizations, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, they said, no, this is no longer scalable. The adoption starts going down. How do you ensure that the success is continuing after the honeymoon period? Let's say that's 1 year.
That's a great point, Vilu. And one of the things that Andrew already talked about is the TCO, total cost of ownership, where as you keep building on this platform, you will see that the total cost of ownership keep growing. It should actually, in a way, it should. At the 5th year, my total cost of ownership should come down, but it keeps growing. That's how I have seen a large enterprise as well, where there are two parts to it. One is a quantitative aspect to it, as you mentioned, like, okay, I'll measure this average handling time, and I will measure this, sales effectiveness and business. But the key here is adoption and user experience, right? If I see that, first year, yes, people are excited. There is a change management. People are liking your platform. People are not liking your platform. So there are many aspects to it. Second year, they get used to it. So they will start, whether they will start working on it, they will start liking it. But 5th year, if you see, if the adoption of your platform is going down, then there is something wrong. So my observation on this is that we need to keep investing on knowing about or assessing about the adoption, assessing about the user experience every time we, let's say I don't want to call it every time we make a release and let's do that, but we should know that how my customer experience are.
You mean the internal users, not
Internal
the
users, yeah, of course.
internal customers.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I say my customers, it's my internal users. They are my customer there. So and then definitely I have to assess my business effectiveness there. How my platform is helping my sales team to increase their revenue, right? Let's say if you have a defined business process that is running for 5 years, 10 years, but the sales process itself has changed, you have to upgrade your system as well at the same time. So those kind of periodic assessments are needed, both business and IT side. It's not just doing you run an assessment, send the report, and we are done. But we have to really be focused and also enhance and probably enhance the user experience there, and more from an adoption perspective. That's kind of what I see as a key.
Thank you, Mukesh. Appreciate that. All right. So this is the next topic is governance and risk compliance. I know we are kind of rushing it. We are coming to an end, and it's a 6 weeks course, but we are putting that in one hour. The governance and risk compliance. So this is where the authoritarian rule comes. You cannot compromise. There is no democracy here. It's not your idea versus my idea. It has to follow the company policies, organization structure and responsibilities, and make sure that you have the right metrics and you enforce it. You get fired if you don't follow the rules. That's pretty much it. There is no exception here. The collaboration and communication is the key. Hub and spoke approach. So Matt had a question. So I'm going to read the question from Matt so we can address this. The question from Matt: can you comment on how best to support a multi-org hub and spoke org model that has resulted from multiple acquisitions? So anybody wants to address this? If you want, I can read the question.
So we spoke to that a little bit when we talked about, multi-orgs as a result of acquisitions, and then the I think, hub and spoke, you could define the topology however you want, but the idea is that there is some standardization going on, a COE and in fact, there are multiple players, right? The COE is not the compliance organization, is not the security organization. So there are multiple players with a vested interest in standardization across all of these areas. And they have different agendas, they have different wishes, and they have different needs. And so although I did introduce the idea of, there is no democracy here in this area. There was some previous chat that we'd had on this topic that's like, well, what if the compliance requirements are just impossibly tedious to maintain? And what if they just fundamentally do not make sense? And I would say there are these profound misunderstandings in organizations about what is actually a legal requirement and what is just the policies that we've put in place because we thought that was what we were supposed to do, right? So there've been I've been witness to some really beautiful conversations between compliance officers and IT folks to talk about what they really want to do, because what the compliance officers really want to do is help the company to succeed and not fail. And ideally, everybody involved wants the company to succeed. And so where there are these inefficiencies in the process, collaboration between these entities, like the compliance office and so forth, so that we can say, well, what if as part of our normal working process, we have all of those controls in place that you want? And what if we have all of the logging and the auditing? And what if we're using version control to track every change, controlling who has access to which things? And it may be that, something that Velu cares about, making sure we don't have everybody has modify all data access in the production org. That's also something the compliance officers care about. And that there can be synergies, to use a loaded word. There can be alignment between the needs of the technical team and the needs of the compliance team, but that takes discussion and thought and care to realize.
Sure. One thing, Matt, if you're listening in, we are at HGSC. When I started with the company a couple of years ago, first thing is I got my own org. COE has its own org. So we actually worked with Salesforce. We had an unmanaged package that we installed from Salesforce, connected with all the orgs to get the vitals. Every day we get the vitals. So we created a dashboard. So now that product was unsustainable, unmanageable, because it was it's unmanaged package and nobody said, Salesforce gave it to us for free. So we couldn't find the developer who could help us to manage it. So we now bought a product called Salesforce Security Center. It has connections to all the orgs. So we are real time. We are able to see what are the security parameters that need to be monitored real time and report back to the security and report back to the product owner. So then that is the hub and spoke we are looking at. So it gives you, you can connect to all the sandboxes in production and you should be able to monitor. So if any COE leader has got more than 2-3 orgs, I would say 3 orgs, you should consider getting your own org and try to bring the vital information from different orgs and put it here. So that's my thought on hub and spoke. And I just, before we move to the next thing, we have only 4 minutes left. Saurav had mentioned, it's an excellent point, a tech debt and bug. What is the difference between tech debt and bug? I like my old car that needs an oil change every month. Costs me time and money, is clunky, maintenance intensive, but works. That's a tech debt. Whereas the bug, my car has a speedometer that shows incorrect speed. Functionally, that does not work as advertised or working as advertised. So the key here for us, the tech debt can lead into a bug which you may not even notice because Salesforce may not give you the ability to report there is a problem. You might be displaying the wrong information through a tech debt. So anyway, well, that's a topic that we do. So let's move on to the next topic, education and talent development. So as you know, I think 41% of the people in the US are considering leaving a job or they left. So there is a big survey, it's a big news. Every company has got a lot of emphasis on it. So let's take about each one of us get a minute to speak to it. It's a self-explanatory. If you want to read about the education, the great resignation, please do a Google. You will find a lot of information. In the Salesforce world, Mukesh, what are the 2 top things that you would consider that is important for hiring and retaining a talent? 1 minute.
Sure. I always believe in one thing, lead by example. As a leader, be it people management is an art to me. It's certainly something that cannot be done A+A for the 2A. All that you have mentioned are great points, but in the Salesforce world, the way this platform has grown, so you will always see attrition. I have managed a entire Salesforce delivery center at Accenture, and back in our IDC, what we call as India Delivery Center, and this is not easy. But one thing that I always insist and have done is investing on our resources, be it training, certification, and I'm a firm believer of cross-training. Cross-training, bringing resources from different technology, from business domain, That has helped to meet the need of my client then. And I think that that's a great way of bringing talent from, be it, let's say somebody like a Java resource or a .NET resource or a SQL resource, cross-train them, cross-pollinate them, and then I have seen they stay more longer in your organization than people. They have grown in the Salesforce ecosystem, and they really experience, they have grown their experience in the Salesforce ecosystem. So that's kind of what I personally think has worked with me, and that's a way to meet the challenges that we see today in terms of the talent.
Thank you, Mukesh. Andrew, closing thoughts from you on this topic.
On borrowed time, but your people are, and the knowledge that they have is a critical part of your architecture. Imagine randomly pulling out a server or an application every few months from your organization. How would the organization function? You rip out data, you rip out integrations. Every person in the company holds data, which is unique knowledge about that company. They hold integrations, which are their relationships with other people in the company. Your people are an absolutely critical part of the architecture of your company. It's great that people have freedom to come and go between different companies, but we need to make our organizations places where people don't feel frustrated. So, for example, people have ideas about improving the company. If they can't get those improvements made, they may get frustrated and feel like they'll just try somewhere else. So you need a company that has the flexibility to learn from its employees, invite those employees to create, make everything better, and really, and as well as learn and continue to enrich their own personal growth. I am a bit fearful about the implications of this resignation for the state of our various industries.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate sharing that. Very good analogy. I really like the way you explained. People are like, what if you pull a node out of a well-functioning network, suddenly you are just pulled it, yanked it. The same thing with people. You let people go and you hire somebody and put them into the system and say, okay, go do it. It doesn't work, and it won't work. Yeah, and that's actually adding more tech debt to your environment. So, so now we have come to the time. I really appreciate Andrew and Mukesh for joining us, and people, folks who are watching and listening. Thank you for joining. I am sure you have questions. If you have more questions, you can reach out to Mukesh directly, Andrew directly. And this video will be posted on our website, CRMCOE. And feel free to take a look at it, give us your comments. And we are here to serve the CRMCOE community. So any comments and feedbacks, welcome. And once again, thank you for joining. And it's a Thanksgiving time. So let's be thankful for whatever we have. We are blessed to have so many things. And once again, thank you, and have a great Thanksgiving, Mukesh, Andrew, and everybody who's on the call. Have a good day.
Thank you, really.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Yeah.